Okay, let's start. So I heard that Friday went well. That's good. I'm going to get the slide deck, and there might be a question or two on the final from it. So we'll make sure to get the slide deck. So we're going to talk about symbiosis today. So here's a caterpillar having a very bad time due to symbiosis. So we'll talk about why we call it symbiosis in a minute. So these are parasitic wasps that are cocooned on the outside after eating the insides and now are flying off to meet other caterpillars. Okay, but first I sent out the midterm. Okay, so we've gotten 2 questions so far. One was about pair of species, and so ideally is some of the ones that we've already dealt with. Okay, if you've already written your question, if you've already written your answer with different species, that's okay. So if you want it, so ideally you'll do the ones that we've done up to now. If you've already done work to answer the question, you don't have to rewrite it. To usually later species, you can keep those. Okay. There's another question about 3. Okay, so one thing we're talking about is like we need to name clades, right? So we need to name mammals and things like that. But one thing about exceptions to that. Wouldn't it be useful to name something that's not a clade? Say, okay, this group of animals X, this group of plants X. Why might that be useful to a biologist? Why might that not be misleading too? Okay. Other questions about this question? Yeah. No, you can just list it. Yeah. Nope. Yep. Yeah. Oh, and that brings me to question length, answer length. So one person's already written 3 pages for one question. That's overkill. Please don't do that to me. You should be averaging about half a page per question. Okay. I'm not going to, but use the words you need to answer it. So if you can answer number 1 with like, 2 words. Yeah. Single space, but again, I want you to answer the question succinctly. I mean, you're more apt to get in trouble if you start like having a long answer and there's some things in the answer that are wrong. Like, oh, I can't quite give it full credit, But if you can just answer the question, just say what you need to say, and then stop, it's better for you probably. Okay. And I'm not going to be basing it on like, oh, this isn't short enough. It's just you have the information I want or not. Okay. Other questions about the midterm? No, use Blackboard. Yeah, so there's a safe assign assignment on Blackboard. This will automatically check for plagiarism, both between people in the class and online. Okay. And if Blackboard goes down at Symphony 9, you can email it to me in that case. This is a record of you having it done on time. But please do try to use Blackboard. I made a practice safe assign assignment, so those of you who aren't used to using safe assign can practice uploading and make sure it works okay. Ideally, use plain text when you upload it. That makes it easier for me. Okay, so rather than like weird OpenOffice format or Microsoft Word, just plain text. If you can't, because you have pictures and something embedded, that's okay too. But ideally, you want to use those. Yeah. Other questions about the midterm? And I have office hours today, and also you can email me if you have questions. Okay. All the other questions, you can understand what they mean? Nothing tricky there. Right. Good. Okay, learning objectives for today. So just definitions of symbiosis, understanding how and why symbiosis can change through time, and then one of the basic skills, making inferences about biology from graphs. All right, so symbiosis is defined as a close, often long-lasting, for at least one partner, association between organisms. Okay. So close association. So lions and gazelles. It's a close association with symbiosis, not long-lasting for individual. The species is long-lasting. And we split it up into 3 kinds: mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. Mutualism both benefit. Parasitism, one benefits, one loses. Commensalism is just from the line, one benefits, one loses. Okay. So in this class, our definition of symbiosis includes all of this. Right? We've also, so colloquially, we think of symbiosis as this. Right, so everything getting together harmoniously, right? And we don't use this definition in class because of how symbiosis can change. Okay, so symbiosis, even in mutualism, is basically reciprocal parasitism. Each partner trying to get what it can out of the relationship. Okay, if it happens to help the other one, fine. If not, fine. Right? The wasp and the caterpillar don't hate caterpillars. They don't benefit from hurting caterpillars. If they could farm the caterpillars and get food that way, they would. Right? Just the way they happen to get nutrition is by eating caterpillars. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So we can make an axis like for this. So here's the benefits of less helped host. Plus 0 minus. Okay. And so I can then delete it. But, so why don't I have minus minus up here? What? Right, why evolve? It could happen, right? I mean, for example, we have competitors, right? Those are minus minus for each other, right? If I eat that grass, you can't eat that grass. We don't like think of that as a symbiosis. That's not a close association. Okay, good. Okay, we have our axis, and then we have the duration of the interaction. So from brief to lifelong, it gets more symbiosis-y if it gets to lifelong, but even short ones can do symbiosis sometimes. Okay, and so what we're going to do is go through a series of examples and plot them on this graph. Okay. And one other thing to note, so is anything going to be exactly 0? No, right? So it's not going to be exactly 0. So it could be, might be negative. Okay, so what's happening here? We have a suicidal fish hanging out near sharks, right? Okay, he feels protected, right? Why? Okay, right? What else? Good. In some cases, actually, I don't think remoras do, but other fish that hang out near other fish sometimes do eat parasites. Good. Yep. Remoras actually tend to use sharks for either help with locomotion or to also eat like food scraps from sharks eating. Yep. Okay. Good. What does the shark get out of it? What? Yeah. Probably nothing. Right. But that's a good question. Why is the shark not eating it? Right. So it's possible. So it could be possible that if the remora is giving the shark some help, the shark would lose that cost by eating it. But in this case, the remora is not helping. But it was like cleaner wrasse, definitely. Yeah. Yep. Well, that's a good question. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a good hypothesis. Yeah. So, I mean, animals have imperfect information about the world. And actually, in the area of biology, we're thinking about how things acquire information. And so maybe it hasn't, it doesn't know whether it's beneficial or not, and maybe it's evolved to, maybe it thinks everything that has black and white stripes is it's like cleaner grass. Okay? That's one good hypothesis. What else maybe? Yeah? Out of the class. It's okay. Mm-hmm. You might have hard time just sort of getting it. So either you can't notice the fish wants to hear the shark, and the shark can't. Or maybe it's not able to. Okay, and also there's about optimal foraging theory. Have you ecologists? Come on. Right. Okay. Right. So like lions could probably hunt grasshoppers. They'd be fine hunting grasshoppers. They don't hunt grasshoppers. Why? Well, it takes so much energy to hunt down each grasshopper, they would starve while eating all the time. Right? So it's better for it to wait, pass a whole bunch of grasshoppers, and save itself to eat a gazelle. So it could be the shark's same thing, where it could possibly, if it worked really hard to get their amora, maybe it's not worth it to get their amora. Okay. And also note, there's a little pilot fish ride the pressure wave in front of the shark. Okay, good. All right, so for amora and shark, it's a moderate length duration, and then it can have some cost to shark, probably not a lot. Good. All right, so what's happening here? I'm not playing tag. Yep. It's injecting aphids with eggs, and then eventually the wasp larvae will kill the aphid parasitoids. So there we see inside the aphid the wasp larvae developing. Okay. So, between the wasp and the aphid, what's the relationship? Parasitism, right? And very long lasting. Okay. In terms of the proportion of life spent in that association, yeah. So not sort of absolute time in terms of years, but in terms of portion of their lifespan spent in that association. Here we see some of the parasitoided aphids. Okay. And so, what about for the plant? What plant's benefiting? Right? And actually, there's some evidence that plants have evolved to communicate with wasps. Say, oh, look, there's food here, come get it. Okay. Which makes sense, right? If it benefits the plant and benefits the wasp, they both co-evolve this ability. Okay. One thing to note here is predation on the spectrum too. You have an considered symbiosis is so short-lived. But the parasitoids will sleep a very slowly predator. Okay, so parasitoid division kills its host, parasite doesn't. Okay. So this is the wasp is a parasitoid, and so the aphid does die. Yep. As opposed to like a mosquito on you. You won't die. Does that make sense? Right, but that's the virus, not the mosquito. Okay, so here in a case, here's a butterfly, and there's a caterpillar from a butterfly, and the ants crawling all over it. So imagine you're a naturalist out in nature. You see this behavior, right? You want to know what's happening here. Is it just things bumping into each other? Is it parasitism? Is it predation? How do you figure this out? So I'll let you break into groups and we can talk about it for a little bit. How would you do experiments to figure this out? And I'll show you some experiments people actually did to do this. Okay. Okay. So what do people think? What would be good ways to test this? Yeah. What aspects of life cycles? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good. Yeah, this could be providing food for the caterpillar or something like that. Good. What else? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yep. So you remove one partner and see how your partner does. Good. Yep. What else? Mm-hmm. Yep. Good. Yeah, I'm doing that sort of actually just doing observations to what's going on. And that tricking actually is interesting. So there's an orchid that is pollinated by male bees, and they mistake the orchid for a female bee. So they land on what they think is a female bee, get frustrated and leave with the pollinia on them. And so it's a case of plants tricking insects. So you could have insects tricking insects as well. Good. Other ideas? Okay. In what way? Yep. Yeah, you're right. We're going to actually get to this later in the class today. about how to use these phylogems to figure that sort of thing out. It's good. Okay, so one experiment they did was rather than removing the caterpillars, they removed the ants. They excluded the ants. The same sort of idea. Okay, and so here is percent mortality. Black bars are with ants, white bars are without ants. So what does this mean? Right, they do better when the ants are present. Does it mean the ants aren't eating them? Not necessarily. So, most likely, the ants aren't doing a lot of predation, but they could be, still eating them a bit, just keeping other predators from eating them more, right? But overall, it's good for it seems to be good in terms of caterpillar survival to have the ants there. Right? That makes sense. Okay. So, ant tannins reduces predation on caterpillars or pupae. Good. Okay, so now we have one observation. What? So we know the caterpillar is receiving benefit. We don't know what the ants are receiving benefit yet. So it could be the caterpillars tricking the ants. So it's sort of a parasitism where the caterpillar is getting a benefit, and the ants are sort of hanging out there because of the pheromone or something. Right? Or it could be the caterpillar is feeding the ants. The ants getting away too. So we haven't shown that it's beneficial for the ants yet. It's going to be beneficial for the caterpillar, certainly. Good. Okay. Now let's get to that question. Is it beneficial for the ants? So what do we see? So here is a tree. Well, we're kind of liking this class, but it's actually a physical tree. And on the tree there's the caterpillar, and the ants climb the tree. Got a PhD studying ants. That's an accurate reflection picture. So the black line is the way the ants going down the tree, and the dotted line is the ants going up. Yep, the gain weight will up there. And going down. Right. So their gasters do. The sort of what looks like the abdomen is not quite the abdomen. The gaster expands if the ants eat more. So, right. So the ants are heavier after leaving the caterpillars and pupae. So now we think about it being a mutualism or not. Seems like it, right? Because the caterpillars are benefiting by not dying as much. And the ants are getting heavier, which is probably a good thing for an ant. Right? Okay. So now let's check out how heavy the caterpillars are. Okay. Can you see these numbers? Yeah. They're heavier and bigger when the ants aren't there. Good. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for a caterpillar? Probably better to be heavier or lighter. No. So, in this in general, it's often better to be bigger. In this case, they have more muscles, they can disperse better, they have more fat reserves, they can survive bad conditions better. So in general, you want to be a heavier, bigger bug. And so this is a weird sort of wrinkle, right? So adults here with ants are smaller than ones with ants, if they survive, right? So what determines if this is good or bad then? Total fitness. So what would that be in this case? Right, and so some function of both the fitness of those caterpillars that do survive, right? How how good they are dispersing and such relative to others in the population, as just the fact that they're alive, right? So if there's a lot of predation in an area, you definitely want to have ants if you're a caterpillar, right? Because you're going to die a lot less. Okay? If there's no predation in an area, it's probably better not to have the ants around, right? Because then you can get bigger and not have to pay off your protectors, right? Yeah. That's a good question. And actually, so I think in this case, I do this because of the experiment, but imagine they would do it without when they're doing this sort of test, do it without prediction at all, excluding predators. Correct, because what you could be having here is selection, right? And so if there's no ants there, then you have less predation, and the ones that get eaten by the small ones. Yeah.
I think, well, this is just me thinking about stuff, but I think that in the past when I've thought about parasitism and parasitism, I've been thinking about one individual, one species, and one individual in the ant.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this really hits home that it's like the whole species that makes sense, like that you're taking into account, because for some of the caterpillars, like maybe they'll die, and that's sad, but then like, as a whole, they're doing better because the ants are there sometimes.
Good. I mean, it's so people often get confused about like good of the species, which is not what you're saying, but you use them to hear that to get confused about that. But you're right. It's sort of like the overall expectation.
Right.
And so, it's like wearing seatbelts, right? So almost always in a crash, you want to have your seatbelt on. Right? If your car happens to roll into the water, the seatbelt's probably a bad idea. It's better if you can just get out quickly, right? On average, though, seatbelts save lives. And so something like this. On average, ants save your life, but at a cost. And so it's fluctuating optimal. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. And so also when we're talking about game theory later, right? I mean, there's certain strategies you can do that often will pay off, sometimes end horribly, right? But on average, they work best, and that's what you do. I think there are games like blackjack or something where it's like you have an optimal strategy, and if you do well, and I don't know again, man. But there's strategies in games that don't always pay off, but on average you'll win. They're not scratch tickets. Good. So, right. So, putting this on our axis, for ant butterfly, right? If it's a less helped host, is something around here, right? Where, the often positive butterfly. We can imagine in cases with low predation, it could be negative. Okay. What would happen in that case? What would happen with evolution? So imagine, oftentimes, it seems to be the case where the ant benefits and the butterfly benefits, right? And so they're selected for working well with each other, and the butterfly paying off the ant and the butterfly protection. It's sort of not control, right? What if it is a better area no predation? Well, how does the temperatures change? Why do you think that?
I don't know, because one thing I'm just confused about parasitism is like, if you're hostiles, then essentially you die. Like, so if the caterpillar goes extinct, maybe the ant goes too.
So it depends on how critical the caterpillar is for the ant. So, if the caterpillar is serving as like aphids, or like a sort of extra sugar benefit, this is actually protein. The ants could do okay, just not as well without it. It's like if you took the bird feeder down in your neighborhood, the birds wouldn't be as happy, but they'd still be okay. Yeah. So I think it's more like that. But if you have an obligate mutualism, where the ants need the caterpillar, then it might increase extinction risk overall. Right. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Asia may not ever see the multiple that would be so detrimental that it would require ants, but that mutualism is very clear in considerations
Mhm.
So I feel like, I mean, also we can consider, but, you know, that even if it was below predation pressure, if the predation numbers were not,
Right. So you think about how selection works. It's good. So here's sort of zero benefit. And if ants in general, it's like a low creation environment, are low negative, low negative, low negative, low negative, low negative, big positive, low negative, low negative, low negative. And sort of think about how that would affect selection over time, right? So it could be if we have a long enough string of this, that mutualism could go away, that symbiosis could disappear, right? This caterpillars could evolve to not give anything to ants, right? But if there's enough events like this popping up, then the frequency of those, so if we imagine on this axis, frequency of mutualistic traits, right, from 0 to 1, it might be up at 1 and then drop down, and then those that are mutualist do better, goes back up, goes back down again, right? And so the strength of selection in this case gives us sort of how quickly we go up. The strength of selection in this case is how quickly we go down. Right, so there's a complex interaction between negative selection and positive selection through time. It's good. Yeah. And it's possible if you enough selection to be up here, you start losing variation. So it's harder and harder to get down because you're losing this for that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's also worth thinking about, so even if that ant weren't optimal for that tree at that stage of life, that tree might not have any choice about it. The same way you don't have a choice. I mean, mosquito biting is never optimal, but it happens. Right? It's good. By the way, I'm impressed by how much you guys remembered about the talk. I was at the same talk, and there was some giraffes somewhere. And, that's good. What? Okay, that's a place. All right. Okay, so here we have what seems to be mostly a nice mutualism, right? So the caterpillar pays off the ant gives the caterpillar protection, okay? But again, remember, mutualism is just reciprocal parasitism. So if one can figure a way to win or to get more benefit in some way, it will, right? And so here we have a caterpillar that now lives in ant nests, right? In the same sort of group of butterflies. So where the leaves it's eating? Yeah, so this caterpillar now lives inside ant nests. Right? So caterpillar were ancestrally living outside eating plants. Now it's living inside an ant nest. What's everything gets eating? Ants. So it could be something where the ants bring it food, like with I-tine ants and bringing leaf cutter ants bringing leaves to things, and that could have evolved, but in this case it didn't. And instead, the caterpillar learned that ants are made of meat, and meat's tasty. Okay, and so here we have a case of evolutionary pattern. So some of the caterpillars sort of live in ant nests and trick the ants, and so the ants in general are exchanging, ants that are outside foraging bring food in through their crop, and they give it to ants inside the nest, right? So the ants antennae will go and they'll, okay, you friend, and then they'll give each other like little food droplets, right? Well, some of the caterpillars have evolved to be able to trick the ants into feeding them too. Okay, so actually live in the ant nests, and they evolved this ability to get food directly from the ants. And some of them actually evolved the ability to just eat the ant larvae without being attacked by the ants. Okay. And so you can see this long evolutionary association allowed, in some cases, then this ability for the caterpillars to start tricking the ants, right? Like if the ants had never interacted with caterpillars, they wouldn't have had, they may have varied in this way, but they never would have been selected for it, right? But with this close interaction, it allowed them to evolve this ability, okay? Where this mutualism will turn into predation. Okay. And so, on the ant axis, they get some benefit from butterflies, but occasionally, the ability to predation. I think they have to leave the pupa. It's a question. Yeah, because I think the butterflies would be attacked. But I don't know that. But it's good. We always see this sort of, and this is over evolutionary time with these incentives change, right? We also see this over ecological time. So, what do ants do with aphids? What? They attend them, right? So this great mutualism we see all over the place. You see a bunch of aphids on a plant. There's the ants walking up to it, stroking the rear of the aphid. The aphid poops out this droplet, and the ant eats it, right? And I had this for breakfast this morning. I had maple syrup, right? And so it's the same sort of thing where you have these plant sugars, sugar water going up the plant. The ants can't get at, but the aphids can. They put a style and suck it out. And so the ants give the aphids protection, and in turn the aphids give the ants this extra sugar water that they don't need. Okay. But later in the season, when the aphids are going to die off anyway, then the ants start just eating the aphids and getting no protein glucose, right? Because at that point, as long as the ants manage to keep the aphids alive anymore, because they're going to die anyway, may as well eat them. Right? And so you see this mutualism shift to become predation over the life of an aphid. Okay. What? Right, something filled to try to disperse them. Yeah. Yep. We do the same thing with dairy cows. So Norse farmers on Greenland who had raised they had cows at first. Lost them. Raised cows and then figure out how much they could survive over, how much could survive over the winter, and those they would eat. Right, keep them for the winter, and then take care of them all summer again, and then kill some of them. Similar sort of thing. Okay, and you see the same sort of thing. See symbiosis happening in general in things like corals. Right. So what's coral bleaching? Not changing the hair color. Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. So corals use algae. Both the algae protection and the coral sugar. Right? If things go bad, if coral is stressed, they can dump the algae and potentially get humans from the environment. Right? And sorry, this isn't working out for us. Goodbye. Let's get a new partner. Right? Or sometimes you don't get a new partner, and then because problems both have to die. So you care about coral bleaching because it can lead to death of corals. Right. So it's failure of symbiosis. Okay. Right, and so we see, oftentimes it's effective to again, the coral can dump the algae. Okay. Why might this sort of trait evolve? Why might this be selected for? Yeah. right? But this ability to like change your partner, as might be a better partner out there, could be adaptive in some cases. And also in the longer term, we see lots of these symbioses having ways of penalizing cheaters, right? So we know about fig wasps. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Excellent. So, if you really think about this, sorry. So here's a figure of fluorescence. And the flowers are on the inside. Seems like a dumb place to put your flowers, right? Well, what they've evolved is this mutualism, where a female wasp will take pollen from this one, fly, go in here, and pollinate these flowers. Okay, and some of them she'll also deposit eggs. Okay, and her larvae will eat some of the seeds that develop. Okay, and those will persist and be seeds and figs. Okay, but there's parasitic ones. That have evolved the ability to go in from the outside and lay their eggs. Okay, so they don't benefit the fig at all. Okay, and what the figs have done is they've evolved the ability to, if they have a fig that has too much predation in them, not enough seeds, they'll just kill the whole fig. Okay, and what this does is create an evolutionary pressure to include selection for having some mutuals persist. Right, so it's a strategy where, if there's a mixture of cheaters and not cheaters, this gives some advantage to not cheating. Okay.
We saw some in Costa Rica over the summer. It's so weird to crack open a fig and then see wasps fly out. You don't eat those.
Yeah. Right? And there's ways, so we see this sort of thing happens. And so, we can say the same thing with the corals and the Zooxanthellae. If you had Zooxanthellae that weren't benefiting the coral, just parasitizing it, the coral could say, oh, I'm not getting anything from these ones, these must be duds, eject. Okay. Rhizobia, same thing. Right? So the bacteria that help plants fix nitrogen. If you have some nodules that aren't producing nitrogen, you stop giving them sugars. Okay. So as a way that, penalizes cheaters and allows you to give nutrients to those that are going to give you the most benefit, the side effect of that is that it, on an evolutionary timescale, penalizes cheating behaviors and prevents the other evolution. Yeah. That could cheat, or in this case, just might not be working that well. So it might not be cheating; it might be not functioning. Yeah. And of course, when this no longer works, we can have issues, right? So human mitochondria, right? If your mitochondria aren't working well, you can't say, okay, you guys are out, get some new ones from the environment, right? And so we get this gradual loss of mitochondrial function, except that it's maintained by selection, right? We have things like mitochondria going into the nucleus, and we have in humans various mitochondrial diseases, because you can't just dump your mitochondria and get new ones. Okay. So it's not a macroevolution shock without a phylogeny. Right? So here we see a phylogeny of gophers and their lice. Okay. So this is not a mutualism, it's parasitism. Gophers don't like having lice. But yet, what do we see about these trees? Yep. Absolutely. Well, absolutely. They're very, very simple. Maybe do a test, but much more similar than you expect by chance. Okay. Why might this be? But there's one hypothesis. So And we sort of see that in some groups, I think. Where I have, my host is being predated upon, and then we're parasitized upon, and this one figures out a new trait, lets it escape, and so it has diversifies, and then the parasite hops over, figures out how to deal with it, and then evolves to deal with it, and so forth. And that tends to create more, in case coevolution, but not quite as well matched. It is a very important process we should talk about this. But what else would cause this pattern? Okay, what does the branch point mean on the gopher tree? So this one, what does that mean? Not necessarily, actually. Speciation, right. So one species becoming two. And oftentimes with that, we do have a change in traits. Right? So perhaps such that when they come back together, they can't interbreed anymore. But it might just be that, the continent they're on split, and now these guys are over here, these guys are over here. So you can cross the water, sure, but it will break perfectly well. Going to the continent, they can't. Right? So we have these speciation events, and we often have the same speciation events in lice. What might that be? Right, they're riding gophers, right? And so when gophers split and don't interact anymore in nature, because they're different species, then the lice populations also don't interact and interbreed anymore. Okay? And thus is a speciation event for the lice too. Okay? It's like, if the gophers are tracking continents, the lice are tracking gophers. Gophers are the continents to the lice. Okay? That makes sense? Okay. But of course, it doesn't match exactly, right? So we have these few disadvantages. This could be either due to errors in the tree, or it could be due to, the gophers, the lice hopping over from one species to another, and that sort of thing. Okay. And finally, the most famous symbiosis, right? So eukaryotes are a symbiosis of multiple bacteria into mitochondria, instead of bacteria, so the bacteria becomes chloroplasts, and some of the bacteria becomes mitochondria. Right? And so right now, in your cells, this is the most happening stuff. And of course, there's no longer reciprocal parasitism because the mitochondrial success is depending on the eukaryotic host cell success, right? So their optima are aligned. Okay. Good. Any questions about this? Okay. I'm going to switch topics around a little bit on the syllabus. We'll get back on the regular order soon. All right. Good. Thank you all.